In the last lecture, you learned how to define user variables. These are the variables that we define using the set statement, and we prefix them using an @ sign. Quite often, we use these variables when we call stored procedures that have output parameters. So just like what we did in the last lecture, we pass these variables to get the value of output parameters. Now, these variables will be in memory during the entire client's session. When the client disconnects from MySQL, these variables are freed up. So we refer to these as user or session variables. We define them using the set statement, and we prefix them using an @ sign. Now, in MySQL, we also have another type of variable called local variable. And these are the variables that we define inside of a stored procedure or function. We'll look at functions soon, so for now, don't worry about them. Now, these local variables don't stay in memory for the entire user session. As soon as our stored procedures finish execution, these variables are freed up. Quite often, we use this type of variables to perform calculations in our stored procedures. Let me show you. So I'm going to define a new stored procedure. Let's call this get risk factor. Now let's make up a business rule. Let's say risk factor equals to invoices total divided by invoices count multiplied by 5. This is where we use local variables. So we can define these local variables in our procedure, and with this we can easily implement this formula. Let me show you. First, we need to declare our variables on the top right after the begin statement. So we use the declare statement to declare a variable, let's say risk factor. Next, we need to specify its type. Let's say decimal of 9 and 2. So as I told you before, that means a number with a decimal point. Here we can have a maximum of 9 digits and 2 digits after the decimal point. Now here we can optionally give this variable a default value. Otherwise, it's going to be null, okay? Now we need 2 more variables. Invoices total. This is also going to be decimal of 9 and 2. Here we have a syntax error because I forgot to add a semicolon here, right? Now, I'm not going to give this second variable a default value because we're going to set it using our select statement. You will see that in a second. Finally, let's declare another variable, invoices count, and this is going to be an integer, right? Now let's write a select statement to set these 2 variables. That is very easy. So select count of everything and sum of invoice total from the invoices table. Now we need to read these values and put them into these variables. So that's where we use the into statement, into invoices count and invoices total. So here we have 2 variables which correspond to these 2 values that we select here. Pretty straightforward. Now let's terminate this statement with a semicolon. Next, we need to calculate the risk factor. So we use the set statement to set the value of a variable. Set risk factor, invoices total divided by invoices count. Let me zoom out a little bit. That's better. And multiply this by 5. Once again, let's terminate this with a semicolon. Finally, we're going to select this risk factor. So this is how we declare and use local variables in stored procedures. As I told you before, these local variables are only meaningful in our stored procedures. So as soon as we declare them, they become available. And as soon as we finish executing the stored procedure, they go out of memory, okay? Now let's create this procedure and test it. So apply, good. And finally, here in the navigator panel, let's execute this stored procedure. And this returns 777.75.